unidentified and started a band. Flying saucer, rock and roll. Rock, rock.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Disclosures of the Third Kind. Today's episode will be looking at the incident at Puget Sound. So that was the Maury Island incident of June the 21st, 1947. A very mysterious event that was very quickly deemed a hoax by those who were investigating the case. Multiple facets concluded that this case was most likely a hoax. However, upon examining the different documentation to the case, it can be seen that there is more to the case than meets the eye. Indeed, on June 21st, 1947, Harold Dahl was fishing on his boat, Maury Island, on Lake Puget Sound. He would witness a formation of flying saucers go across, over the top of his boat. That formation of flying saucers were very similar in appearance to what Kenneth Arnold would see on June the 24th, 1947, when he witnessed 9 saucers. He described them as saucers skipping over water. The press then went to town and took it as flying saucers. If you don't know the whole story, that's pretty much the whole thing behind it. So yes. But again, the Maury Island incident 3 days before the Kenneth Arnold sighting, it clearly showed that something was going on. There was definitely something in the air observing the United States of America and the rest of Earth. Mainly with a close look on the United States of America due to its atomic weaponry capability. They were the only atomic bomb country at that time in 1947, with the 509th Bomb Group in New Mexico. Again, we would see that with Roswell on July 2nd, and up to the press release of July 8th, 1947. But that's a discussion for another episode, as they say. So, what really happened at Puget Sound? Well, see, there's multiple facets to this case. You've got Harold Dahl saying fragments dropped from this saucer, which basically hovered over his boat. It looked like it was struggling, he says, like it was going to crash. Then he explains that the saucer basically dropped fragments from the center of it. So there must have been some sort of hole in the middle of this saucer or propulsion system. My thoughts, and again, I haven't got the evidence to prove this, but my personal thoughts is that these saucers worked on a form of geomagnetism. Now, we know that from Dr. Robert Sarbacher and his memorandum between him and Wilbert B. Smith in 1950. He was under the impression, from what the scientists had studied, that these saucers worked on a system of geomagnetism. So my theory is that the magnetism of this saucer picked up fragments from basically a nearby slag mill or anywhere near there where slag metal was picked up by this saucer by accident. Maybe it came too close to the ground. Maybe it was struggling. Maybe the magnetism had fouled on the ship. I don't know. I haven't got the evidence for that. But what I do have the evidence for is the metallic debris, and we have pictures of that on the FBI vault. Now, for my book, I investigated the debris, and they weren't sure what it was. They said it was hot, like molten metal. They said that basically it could be parts of a meteor, but they weren't sure. And then they concluded saying actually it was just slag metal from a nearby mill. So yes, on my last book, I come to the conclusion that it must have been some type of meteor, but I was in error because actually what it really was just slag metal. But why was slag metal picked up by some type of saucer and then dropped over Harold Dahl's boat? It caused enough of a force, ladies and gentlemen, to kill his dog and just basically make holes in his boat, which has been seen. There's no pictures on the FBI vaults, but we know that from Harold Dahl, Fred Krisman, and the US Air Force investigators who investigated the case. So, what's most interesting about the Maury Island incident is the day after the event occurred to Harold Dahl, he had a visit from a shadowy figure. This figure was a man in black. Now, before you scold me, say, oh, men in black, it must be a joke. Well, let me continue. This man in black basically warned Harold Dahl not to discuss the incident, play like the incident was a non-event, which must have played on his mind, because 4 or 5 days later, after the case had happened, he would then go to the press. He was quite worried about talking about it. I think the only way he went to the press or this got out is with help of Kenneth Arnold, who went down with Raymond Palmer to investigate the case, because he was writing a book called The Coming of the Saucers after his event that he had witnessed on the 24th of June 1947 with 9 saucers in formation. So, and that was over Mount Rainier, Washington, by the way, if you don't know the case. Again, I'll do another video explaining that case. This is just the Maury Island incident. So, what's really going on here? Well, we've got a man in black paying a visit to Harold Dahl, basically saying what you've seen, play it like a non-event, it didn't happen. We don't know the wording that was used, but we know they were threats that were quite sinister. He would explain that much. So what was this man in black doing, and why was he so interested in the case? Well, my personal theory is he had something to do with the FBI, CIC, that's Counterintelligence Corps, or he was some type of, see, I can't say CIA, because the CIA was set up until September of 1947 by Roscoe H. Hillenkoetter. Now, Roscoe H. Hillenkoetter, Admiral Roscoe H. Hillenkoetter, was a member of the Majestic 12. Now, we'll get back to that. These things start to create a bit of a mind map and a puzzle that comes together, but we'll come back to that. My own theory is that he had something to do with the FBI, because shortly after the event, the metal had been picked up on the FBI vaults, on a document just after the metallic debris that's been pictured. It clearly states that the metallic debris is to be destroyed by the 16th of August 1947, which is really interesting, because 2 US Air Force investigators picked up the metal to examine it and take it by a B-25 Mitchell to California Air Base. Well, needless to say, the B-25 never made it. The B-25 had engine failure, which is fascinating. Did this shadowy man in black have something to do with the destruction of this craft? Did he cause the engine failure on the B-25? Was it some sort of hijack? That's my theory. My theory here pulls together 3 different aspects. Harold Dahl was warned about the case. He didn't take heed, didn't pay any heed to the warning. Shadowy man in black basically visits him. He's part of FBI or CIC. The metal on the FBI website or on the FBI documents has been told to be destroyed, either through different means of we don't want this getting out to the public, or that's why they had this man in black investigate Harold Dahl's case and warn him, what have you. The fact that 2 US Air Force investigators went down and then their B-25 Mitchell crashed is even more interesting, because it says to me that either one of these men in black or an FBI individual had something to do with that crash. They either hijacked the plane because they didn't want that metal ever arriving in California. In actual fact, what they'd done is they'd done their job. It looked like an accident, because the case was investigated for a while, but then it was dropped. So, in actual fact, they didn't have to destroy the metal. It just got lost in the plane, and that was the end of it. Plane crashed, the metal's gone. No need to investigate any further. The case gets closed as a hoax. It's a very clever and well put together chain of events. So what do we conclude from this? Well, I think we can conclude that there was more than just a mere hoax to this event. The fact that the metal's ordered to be destroyed and that's on documentation, the fact that Harold Dahl was threatened by a man in black, the fact that the crash happened to the B-25 Mitchell, there was engine failure, the fact that it was very quickly then after that deemed a hoax. These are very, very interesting parts of the case. And the more information I get, the more information you'll know, folks. Follow me for more of this. My name is Christian Stefanese. This is Disclosures of the Third Kind. And if you have enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. And for all you newcomers, do be sure to check out my new book. That's Beyond Roswell, Cold War Cover-Ups and Conspiracy Theories. That can be found on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all other great booksellers, those of Waterstones and W.H. Smith too. These are online retailers. Would appreciate the support. Again, like and subscribe. And yeah, I will catch you in the next episode.